I'm joined now by Congressman Jamie Raskin. Congressman, thanks for joining me again.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
So we have watched as Donald Trump engaged in this almost comical corruption scheme where he is seeking 200 and almost a quarter of $1 billion from the DOJ to pay himself, basically using the U.S. Treasury as his own piggy bank. You've now led the effort to take action against him. Can you explain what the new move is?
Well, the mind-blowing thing about this one is that it could almost all happen in secret. In fact, we only know about it because somebody leaked out that he'd filed this administrative claim asking for $230 million from the US government because he felt he was injured under the Federal Tort Claims Act. That's usually for deaths, violent injuries. I found one with a baby who was born with brain damage because of malpractice in a military hospital, a federal hospital, and that one was extraordinary, and that was only for like $10 million, and he's asking for $230 million for things that are not even torts, not even civil wrongs committed against him. He's asking for that money because he didn't like the fact that there was a judicial search warrant executed at Mar-a-Lago. I'm sorry, but that happens hundreds of thousands of times a year. And everybody who is the subject of a judicial search warrant, and remember, you have to go to a judge and prove that there's probable cause that a crime is taking place or a crime has taken place. And then, of course, it produced all this documentation, all these photographs of classified documents in his bathroom and in the pool table and all that. But in any event, he thinks he should get $230 million for that. Included in his stupid complaint is a request for $75 million for punitive damages, which are not even allowed under the Federal Tort Claims Act, even when you've got a real tort like somebody, being killed by a federal doctor or run over by a federal truck or something like that.
Yeah. So now, in terms of what can be done, I mean, what is the new action being taken in Congress to kind of
Okay,
expose this?
so here's the thing. This is not a lawsuit. The public is not represented. There's no court. There's no trial. There's no jury. There's no judge. All he's doing is asking for two officials in the Department of Justice, one of two officials, to approve his petition for $230 million. And one of them is his own deputy attorney general,
Yeah.
who got famous for going out and talking to Ghislaine Maxwell, right? And effectuating her transfer to a camp, extremely minimum security facility in Texas, when he was satisfied with the things that she was saying and not saying about Donald Trump and the Jeffrey Epstein affair. So these are his sycophantic underlings who are going to be deciding whether he gets $230 million. So what I'm focused on right now is that all of this could be happening in secret. It's all behind the scenes in the back rooms. And for all we know, Brian, it's already happened, right? Because they don't have to report it to anybody until the end of the year when a list of the Department of Justice's expenditures are made. Understand, generally, this is phenomenally difficult to win a suit, even when there's a real violent tort. I mean, think about all the people who are being roughed up and manhandled by ICE in these raids across the country. If these people have any way of getting any compensation for being falsely imprisoned for 5 days or being roughed up and thrown on the ground, it's through the Federal Tort Claims Act. And they never settle it out, right? And it's extremely difficult to win even in court because there's so many legal doctrines that you got to jump over before you can actually get a real hearing on it.
So you're launching an investigation, a public investigation into all of this. But I guess the broader question here, and the question I'm sure most people who are watching are asking, is can anything be done to stop this? I mean, if Donald Trump just has carte blanche, if his only obstacle to being able to pull $250 million is his own criminal defense attorney and his own attorney general, who are perfectly content to be doormats for the guy, then
Yeah.
then what's to stop him? And by the way, what's to stop him from doing it again or doing it for $500 million? Why not? Why not take $1 billion? Why not take $5 billion if there's
Why not
really no obstacle?
$50 billion? Yeah.
Right.
And then this number happens to match exactly what he's seems to have been committed in the White House demolition of the East Wing and the construction of his new Marie Antoinette La-di-da ballroom for the CEOs and the billionaires. So it may be that, there will undoubtedly be major cost overruns with that project. Maybe he's just looking to take that money and put it over there. God knows he doesn't want to reach into his own pocket, even though those pockets have been filled with more than $3 billion in crypto money since the beginning of the year. But look, what can be done? Like everything else during this nightmarish Trump period, it's a case of first impression, by which I mean it's never happened before. So we don't have a mechanism necessarily to stop this, which is why the first thing I want to do is to let the sunlight pour in so everybody can see exactly what's going on, because they're definitely trying to finagle this behind closed doors. And I don't know who leaked it out and who made it available, but whoever is out there, I hope and I trust, is trying to make known everything that's going on with respect to this. But we have demanded, and I've sent a letter demanding from the Department of Justice all documentation, all correspondence, all conversations that have taken place between the White House and the president and the Department of Justice about this matter. And obviously, once Congress is put back in the hands of rational people, we've got to make it impossible for this ever to happen again by saying that if a president of the United States, if government officials have a federal tort claims action against the government, it's something that must go to court. So we actually have plaintiff, defendant, the offering of evidence, a neutral, impartial magistrate, and not the president's own employees making a decision about whether or not to give him $230 million or $2.3 billion or whatever he might ask for.
Is there any discomfort from your Republican colleagues about this, or do they really want to be on record supporting the President of the United States, who may at some point be a Democrat in the future, being able to just use the U.S. Treasury as his or her own personal bank account? Like, their silence here right now is going to establish that precedent, whether they just think that any president of any party is allowed to just pilfer money from the Treasury.
I mean, it's a great question. Of course, our Republican colleagues would have to be coming to work in order for us to answer that. None of them have been around for this, and they've not uttered a peep. And when, Mike Johnson has been at a press conference, he continues to feign ignorance about the whole thing and say, oh, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. I mean, can you imagine if Joe Biden or Barack Obama had actually said, I'm going to shake down the federal government for $230 million and I'm going to have my attorney general's people decide on it. Oh, and by the way, they happen to be my private lawyers, the way Todd Blanche worked for him before. I mean, it's just astounding. It's astonishing. So when you say, well, aren't they afraid that, turnabout is fair play and a Democratic president's going to do that in the future? The reality is, when they really think about it, they know that we're not going to nominate somebody who's going to come in like this compulsive, kleptocrat and just start pilfering the government. And by the way, violating the Constitution, too, because this violates the Domestic Emoluments Clause, which says that the president is confined to his salary in office, which cannot be increased by $1 from a federal source. And it can't be reduced either. And they're just trampling that. So I think they think, well, the Democrats play by the rules, but we don't play by the rules. And we're going to support our dictator to take it as far as he can go.
Right. The reality is that that's the perfect point, because they don't have to worry about, the whole adage of what goes around comes around, because they know that Democrats are not going to nominate or elect somebody who would do this in the first place. And so they're covered in that respect. But you touched on the part.
And also, if they throw caution to the winds and they allow Trump everything he wants, they think the Democrats will never get back in.
Right.
They will gerrymander themselves into power. They will cement themselves into power with Citizens United and all the corporate dark money. And, it'll be like the Hunger Games, where, the capital city will be this embedded financial military fortress against the peasants.
Yeah. I did want to ask about something that you touched on, which is the fact that this is blatantly unconstitutional. I have Article 2, Section 1, Clause 7 in front of me that says the president shall receive receive compensation for his services, but that he shall not receive within that pay period any other emolument from the United States. And so this is clearly blatantly unconstitutional. I understand that the Constitution itself is not self-executing, but what is the recourse here? What's the remedy when you have such a blatant violation of the Constitution, such a blatant violation of the Emoluments Clause? Who has standing to bring this into court and to push back against this?
Well, two different questions. One, who has standing? Well, the Roberts Court would pretty much say, no, nobody's got standing to challenge Donald Trump over anything, right?
Right.
So that's a serious problem. On the other hand, if we can take the Congress back, we can use the power of the purse in order to cut off equivalent amounts of money to the Department of Justice, demand restitution. We can impose all kinds of penalties and fines for them doing this, and we can make sure we get the people's money back. It's just a lawless situation. And by the way, we got to compare and contrast the domestic and the foreign emoluments clauses, right? The foreign emoluments clause says that a president or nobody in federal office shall receive a present, an emolument, which means a payment, an office, or a title of any kind, whatever, from a king, a prince, or a foreign state without the consent of Congress. Okay, so there's the loophole that Congress could say, you know what, we approve your $400 million jet you're bringing back from Qatar. We will vote for that, okay, which we never would vote for it. Even the Republicans, I think, would be hard-pressed to cast that vote. But Trump hasn't come to us, all right? But now compare that to the domestic emoluments clause. There's no saving clause which says it's all right if Congress votes for it. It just says categorically, as you quoted it, Brian, that the president can receive no other emoluments from the federal government or from a state. You can't use your presidential office to rip off the taxpayers.
So can you just explain a little bit about why it's allowed to happen if it is blatantly unconstitutional, and what happens in the event that not just the emoluments clause is violated, but any clause of the Constitution is violated? What remedy is there if somebody violates the Constitution and, we're in a situation like we're in right now?
The Trump period is showing that we have the Constitution that we're willing to fight for. If you're not willing to fight for the foreign emoluments clause and say the president must bring his $400 million theocrat Qatari jet to us for approval, he's just going to go ahead and do it.
Right.
If we don't somehow insist as a self-respecting Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, that the president not be looting the public treasury for hundreds of millions of dollars simply by telling his own underling to write him the check, well, then he's going to get away with that violation of the domestic emoluments clause. It's like what the whole country is agape, just astounded to watch this week, which is the bulldozing the White House. Like, how can this happen?
Yeah.
And if we don't have control of Congress and we can't stop him, and we've never, there is a criminal statute called destruction of government property. And that's the closest that I can find to saying he's destroying government property outside of the law, and he has no permission or authorization for it. But that would require the Department of Justice to bring a prosecution to go and try and stop it. And what are the chances of Pam Bondi doing that? Not great. Not great.
Well, I appreciate you bringing this to the forefront and for fighting for this. And I hope that the point is made to your Republican colleagues that, again, what goes around comes around. There will be a point when Democrats are back in office, despite Trump and Republicans' best efforts to entrench permanent rule for themselves. And if they really want to establish the precedent that any president of any party can just decide how big of a check he or she wants to write himself or herself, then that's what they're doing right now by virtue of having failing to have enough of a spine to actually speak up. So again, appreciate your work on this issue. Congressman, thanks so much for the time.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Hang tough.